Randy, we've got a problem. What? They go. Reality's here. He's trying to crash the party. Reality? Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda like I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
That was totally wicked!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News on your morning time. It is 10:13 Eastern. That means it's 9:13 Central on this day, Monday, October 12th. Welcome back to you in particular. I appreciate you joining us this morning. I know you'll have several choices as to where you can go this morning to get a full digest of things going around this state and this nation. Not least of which is the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, which are going on right now. We will be speaking a little bit about that. Although, if I'm being frank, let's dive right into a little bit of this right now. I was just talking with these guys. We were watching a little bit into the background as we were getting rolling in this morning. I don't even know why they have her in the room anymore. It just seems to be a lot of grandstanding from either side, none of which is directed towards this lady's jurisprudence, which in my opinion is where it needs to be in a vein of originalism, best at worst textualism, but at least originalism. It's been a while since we've had a good one appointed there that's doing it. Gorsuch said he was going to be, didn't really turn out to be that case. Hopefully we can cross our fingers and say Amy Coney Barrett's going to be that person, but they're not directing any conversations that way. So why not just remove her from the room or just don't have the hearings televised at all, is what my boy Zig says. Speaking of my boy Zig, let's introduce him real quick. It's been a while. Y'all know him. You love his face. You love his opinions even more. Zig, how you doing? How's it going out in PA way, man?
Man, I'm doing all right, man. Things could not be better to be on Real News and be with my real friends and real family. Nothing is better.
Real news, real friends, real family. If you are brand new to this program, that's what we do here. We create a community, a situation by which we can have calm, cordial dialogue and exchange of ideas and maybe, possibly even disagree with one another. Because when we do disagree with one another, we want to make sure we have disagreements with friends and neighbors, not disagreements amongst enemies. That is vitally important. Let me get just through a quick local breakdown of some of these things going on, and then we'll get straight into the national news stuff. Joe Biden packing the court, election 2020. Voters say they're better off now than under Trump than they were under Obama or Bush or Reagan, believe it or not, at the end of the first four-year term. A lot of stuff we got to get through. And not Reagan. And Bill Maher saying, we're having too many businesses leaving California. What in the world is going on? But let's hit a couple that's a little bit what he said. Right? My buddy Ben Shapiro left, and now I have nobody to brag on. So yeah, right. That's your tease right there. Local stories here in Knoxville. I think this is a great thing that they're doing in Knoxville, but it's something you can see more and more across the nation. They are having outdoor concerts for benefits that will benefit indoor venues. Now, that's weird, but here's the headline from WATE. Drive-in benefit concert for Bijou Theater being held at Soaky Mountain Water Park. Now, this is, let's see here. It's the Yacht Rock cover band, Sean. It was the Yacht Rock Review, I think is what they're called.
No, it's not the Yacht Rock Review. It's Smooth Sailor. Oh, no, Yacht Rock. Sailor? This is actually Yacht Rock Review from Atlanta.
Yeah, Whoa. Yeah, Atlanta band Yacht Rock Review.
Whoa, they started this movement of cover bands playing smooth rock from the 80s. They started it, man.
Oh, well, shit,
they are awesome.
Go, man. November 7th, benefit drive-in concert is going to be held at Soaky Mountain Water Park. We're not getting paid for this. I know this sounds like an ad, but the reason why I'm doing this is just to let y'all know there are several indoor venues among a myriad of other industries that are going under right now and likely will never recover. I mean, there are full-on industries that we probably won't see anymore again because of this. We've just now started to feel the real implications of this overall nationwide shutdown. And some of these indoor venues is going to be one of them. So anyways, thedriveinconcert.com, thedriveinconcert.com, if you want to check that out. I just think it's a cool thing y'all are doing out in Knoxville, using an Atlanta-based band that's massive sort of regional recognition to, benefit an indoor venue, to save that venue, hopefully get past some of this COVID stuff, have some more concerts at the indoor venue there. Next update here.
Let me throw out there too, Grant. The ticket price looks high, but it's for your whole car. So if we bring four people, it's only like, $50 ticket or $40 ticket. But I had friends who've done this. They've done it over in North Carolina. They went and saw Papadocia over the weekend over in Maggie Valley. They said the format is super cool. I mean, they basically have you park the back of your car facing the concert, and then everybody like makes beds in the backs of their car and like just lays down and watches it. And then there's no expectation that people can just walk up to your car because of COVID. So but if you know people, you can plan to be parked next to them and stuff. But it's really fun. To me, it feels like VIP. It's like totally VIP because you have your own space. You're not expecting other people to be walking up in there. And then you get to enjoy the concert very comfortably, like not sitting on the ground, sitting in your car, maybe even in air conditioning or whatever. But anyway, it sounds really fun, and I encourage people to do it.
That is pretty cool, man. And I just read here, you're right. That $175 ticket includes a car up to 6 people. So bring 5 of your friends, man. Split that $175 6 ways. It's not that bad of a ticket price at the end of the day. Hey, quick update here for Davidson County Election Commission. So we've been going on and on about this whole Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. Just want to bring him up to speed. The last point that we left, and we spoke about this on Friday of last week, Friday's show, literally we were saying, we don't know what the move is. The Election Commission has not brought a suit forward. Initially, they said, we're going to kick this decision off to the court system for a declaratory judgment to figure out if we can go forward with this referendum. For those that don't know, Nashville put forward a 34% property tax increase. Here at Americans for Prosperity, we said we don't like that idea. We're going to gather about 25,000 signatures to say no thanks, but no thanks. We're going to kick it back. We don't want that. This went to the Election Commission. They said, we think there may be something legally deficient here. We're going to kick it to the court system. That's where it was left. 2 weeks ago, that's what they said, and nothing has happened. Well, as of Friday, they finally filed with the court system. And that's basically the whole story. That's it. It was WSMV was the first person to report on this, first outlet to report on this. Just wanted to bring people up. Davidson County Election Commission did file a lawsuit on Friday to seek guidance on the petition by For Good Government. AFP is yet to be brought in on that, so it's a good thing there, I suppose. Calling for a charter amendment related to limiting increases of county property tax. We will definitely keep you all up to date with how this is going forward here. All right, let's move into national section here, because we got to get off right at 11 o'clock, right at 10 o'clock Central today. And I want to give our boy Zig enough time to get in on some of this stuff. Being that the Amy Coney Barrett story is going to be taking over most of the morning headlines here, let me just dive into some of this coverage. Now, we're not going to jump over to some of these things going on. And let me tell you right now, as I said before, I don't really think you're going to miss all that much. I just don't think you're going to miss all that much by not watching the confirmation hearings. I don't know who if this is a controversial opinion. It's just in this day and age, it's just become an absolute farce. It's become a circus sideshow. It's just become a platform upon which both Democrats and Republicans, in my opinion, are doing a little bit of grandstanding. And that is my personal opinion here. I would like to go through a little bit of Amy Coney Barrett's opening statement, though, because I think this is where you're going to get a lot of the substantive material as to who she is, how she's going to rule, and maybe a little bit of a glimpse into her jurisprudence, meaning the way she will typically rule on certain things. She starts out talking about how she clerked for Justice Scalia. And you heard her say this just a few minutes ago. She said, like many law school students, I felt like I knew the justice before I ever met him. She goes on to say, because of his colorful opinions that everyone can read right now. She says his judicial philosophy was straightforward, said that his had more to do with shaping me than anybody else. A judge, she says, must apply the law as written, not as the judge wishes it were. A judge must apply the law as written, not as a judge wishes it were. Sometimes that approach meant reaching results that he did not like. But as he put it in one of his best-known opinions, that is what it means to say we have a government of laws, not of men. And that is just absolutely perfect. I love every word of that. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Again, one of the reasons why I like Scalia, he was not a nice person. Met him, signed a book for me, came and spoke at our law school. Not a nice dude. He was not a nice guy. He was an old curmudgeon, but I loved his rulings for that simple fact of, I'm not supposed to be telling you how to run your country. I'm not. All I do is I stand up here and I look at the four corners of this very old document and I tell you what your thing means within the four corners of this. If you want to change it or do something different, there are very clear mechanisms laid out within this Constitution that you can change it. Go, have at it, have a field day. Amy Coney Barrett goes on to say, a similar principle applies to the role of courts. Courts have a virtual responsibility to enforce the rule of law, which is critical to a free society. But courts are not designed to solve every problem or right every wrong in our public life. Dude, this is music to my ear. I'm loving it. The policy decisions and value judgments of government must be made by the political branches elected by and accountable to the people. Can I read it one more time? The policy decisions and value judgments of government must be made by the political branches elected by and accountable to the people.
Dude,
exactly.
That's my favorite track on her album, man.
Yeah, that's right. Track 2 is a banger, man.
That's the hit right there. That's the feel-good hit of the fall right there.
Make sure you got the bass turned way up on that track.
Oh, solid bass.
Solid bass on that one. The public, she says, the public should not expect courts to do so, and courts should not try. Finally, one other thing I want to say here, and I'll add some more in after I get Zig's opinion. She says, when I write an opinion resolving a case, I read every word from the perspective of the losing party. I ask myself, how would I view the decision if one of my children was the party I was ruling against? Even though I would not like the result, would I understand the decision was fairly reasoned and grounded in law? This is the standard I set for myself in every case, and it is the standard I will follow as long as I'm a judge on any court. Now, there's a couple other paragraphs I would love to get through, but let me kick to my boy Zig. Zig, in general, man, from everything we started with saying that this is just a bunch of grandstanding that's probably going on this morning, my personal opinion, all the way to a little bit of a glimpse into what her jurisprudence might be, where do you stand on an Amy Coney Barrett?
Well, for one, in terms of television being involved in any confirmation hearing, I don't think that should exist. For one, we ought to try to minimize all television in any aspect of anyone's life at all times, factually speaking. But in addition, one thing that I wanted to comment on is that it's not, while people say she's going to interpret the Constitution, even folks who are originalists have to weigh whether or not they are going to look at Supreme Court precedent versus the Constitution and weigh it. You know, it's nice to say that thing, but it lacks nuance. It lacks nuance. Not all judges are going to put the Constitution over Supreme Court precedent. And so in terms of evaluating her judicial philosophy, for that record, we would have to look at what her thoughts are on that very important matter, right?
No, I totally hear you. I do. And then obviously some of what you're getting to is, I presume what some of the questions by Democrats in particular today is going to be of, hey, what are you going to do about Roe? What are you going to do about Casey? What are you going to do about Obergefell? Meaning, what are you going to do about abortion, and what are you going to do about homosexual marriage? And again, being, you know, that Amy Coney Barrett's going to be a person that relies upon stare decisis or precedent, as Zig is saying, she's probably going to give the canned response of, well, I'm going to, as much as I possibly can, rely upon the rule of, if the previous course decided it, it's probably correct, unless there's something, you know, so egregious or so wrong, or it's just patently false or something to this effect. Now, that's not to say, though, Zig, that a case couldn't get up there and change the way that they interpret some of this stuff. Maybe not completely overrule it, but I don't know. There's a few abortion cases coming up. I know one coming out of Alabama in particular that they may actually grant cert to, that, I don't know, you could see some restrictions being pulled back on that whole language of an undue burden. When I said Casey a second ago, I think that's the controlling case that's actually going on. Right? We cite to Roe v. Wade as if that's the abortion case. But at least to the best of my knowledge, Casey versus Planned Parenthood is the actual language that kind of dictates what abortion law is in this country right now. And the primary language around that is whether or not it poses an undue burden on the female. Now, whether that's going to get up to the Supreme Court and they're going to roll back what is an undue burden, I don't know. But it goes to Zig's point a little bit here of, are you going to go with a pure, strictly constitutional interpretation? Because if you do, Amy Coney Barrett could say, I don't know, it's not up to us to decide, is it? You have this thing called the Constitution. Go write a law, convince your fellow man to pass it. I mean, if you're really zealous about it, kick an amendment through, man. We got 27 of them. When was the last one passed?
And furthermore, if any judge was a true quote-unquote originalist, just by following the 10th Amendment, you would automatically undo all these big sweeping national programs that have been going on for about 100 years now. So that's an overly simplistic idea that people ought to take issue with. But when judges will say that, but they will also rely on precedent. So, she's going to rule on precedent, and anybody who thinks that she's going to overturn Obamacare, that's not going to happen. And furthermore, none of the legal lobbying surrounding Obamacare is encouraging her to overturn or undermine Obamacare. That's not happening anywhere at all.
Hey, let me read one last thing here. And Shine, if you could, in the show notes there, under this Amy Coney Barrett section here, it's about halfway down in the national story section. Quick plug, by the way, if you're watching for the first time and you want to follow through in the show notes, there's a link, there's an Evernote link in the description of every video. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitch or wherever you're watching, realnewsradio.live, that's the landing page where you find all that stuff, realnewsradio.live. But there's a link in all those videos for the Evernote link, and that's literally the show notes that we go through every single morning. Shannon and I do a great job curating some of this stuff, and we put it out to y'all so y'all can follow along. And more than anything, just so you know that we're not making up half this stuff. But if you could find Shine under the Amy Coney Barrett hearing section, there's a video, a YouTube link at the bottom portion of that little heading. It says, students say successful women should be celebrated, except when it comes to Amy Coney Barrett. And as Shine's pulling up this video here, it's not that long, but it gives an interesting take on where I think some of this conversation is going to go today. And before we get to that video, let me read one last thing that Amy Coney Barrett says here. She says, when the president offered this nomination, I was deeply honored, but it was not a position I had sought out. And I thought carefully before accepting. The confirmation process and the work of serving on a court, if I am confirmed, requires sacrifice, particularly from my family. I choose to accept this nomination because I believe deeply in the rule of law and the place of the Supreme Court in our nation. I believe Americans of all backgrounds, an independent Supreme Court that interprets our Constitution and laws as they were written. And I believe I can serve my country playing that role. She goes on to talk about how she grew up when she was 9 years old. She remembers watching and hearing about Sandra Day O'Connor becoming the first woman to sit in this seat. And she goes on to say this exactly, quote, she was a model of grace and dignity throughout her distinguished tenure on the court. When I was 21 years old and just beginning my career, Ruth Bader Ginsburg sat in this seat. She told the committee, what has become of me could only happen in America. That's what Ruth Bader Ginsburg told the committee at that time. What has become of me could only happen in America. I have been nominated to fill Justice Ginsburg's seat, but no one will ever take her place. I will forever be grateful for the path that she marked and the life that she led. Now, just setting this up as the stage, this is Amy Coney Barrett talking about another woman who has blazed the trail so that she could even sit in the possibility of being confirmed for the next Supreme Court nominee. A lady with which I would venture to say she would disagree with virtually all, but let's be comfortable and say most of Ruth Bader Ginsburg decisions. Most of the opinions she ever penned, I'm certain she would say I disagree with. Nevertheless, she thinks she's completely indebted to her for what she's done so that she could be sitting there that one day. Now, Shine, in that vein, let's see where our current day college students are sitting with this whole aspect of women working for women. Go ahead and play those clips.
Hi, I'm Ophelia Jacobson with Campus Reform. We've seen attacks on Trump's recent Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett. But as a woman who could potentially fill one of the highest seats in all of government, shouldn't feminists be praising her, especially for all of her accomplishments as a woman? Let's see what students have to say. Okay, so do you think women who have reached the top of male-dominated fields should be celebrated by feminists?
I definitely say yes, because we have to work harder to get into it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, feminism is to celebrate women's equality in different areas like the workforce, you know, to get recognition.
Of course. It's such a huge accomplishment. I mean, just being a woman ourselves, we know the obstacles and things we have to jump over.
Absolutely. It's not every day that women really rise above men, so.
Yes, I think any accomplishment by women should be celebrated by feminists, but it is about overall equality.
I think if they work hard in order to get to the top position, then they should be able to celebrate it.
Of course, I think we should celebrate any time a woman succeeds if she does it with integrity.
When they do make it to the top, it's definitely is an achievement.
So do you celebrate Amy Coney Barrett? So do you both celebrate Amy Coney Barrett?
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I'm unsure who that is.
I don't know who that is.
Who's that? I'm sorry?
What is Amy Coney Barrett?
I guess I'm a bit conflicted on, like, yeah, she should be proud of where she's gotten, but personally, I'm not a fan of her.
Yeah, so she was nominated to the Supreme Court. She has 7 kids. She's a mom. She graduated first in her class from law school, and now she's being nominated to one of the highest positions in all of U.S. government. Do you celebrate this?
But Trump nominated her?
Yes.
So that's more of like a cover-up.
No. I don't think it was the best nomination.
Why do you say that?
Though I'm not the best person to ask about this, so I don't know too much on the subject.
Do you celebrate Amy Coney Barrett?
You're not the best person to ask.
That's a Supreme Court nominee.
No, I do not.
Why not?
I do not support her views and how she feels about abortion. And
credit to her for getting nominated, but she hasn't been appointed yet. The fact that she is a woman getting on the Supreme Court shouldn't itself be celebrated, but not to the extent when you have to see what she'll do for women.
Some feminists aren't celebrating her just because of her conservative beliefs and the fact that she was nominated by President Trump. Do you guys agree with this, or do you think we should still be celebrating her regardless?
You should celebrate her regardless of her political views. I mean, she's an amazing woman. She's at top of her class, had 7 kids, and still, like, no matter challenges, she got all the way to the top.
He's trying to reach a targeted audience where he doesn't have necessarily a lot of support because he is a misogynist.
Why do you say that he's a misogynist?
Because he hates women.
Do you have any examples of that?
I'm getting railed here.
I admire her hard work and determination to get to the top, but facing the facts, RBG.
Are you kidding me? This is comic gold. It's hard to like look away. It's like a slow train wreck times an atomic bomb times 50. It's hilarious.
Well, again, let me say one more time. If anybody's new to what this program is, several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, Shannon and I, among several other folks in the Knoxville area, started this program as a movement. We didn't just start as a talk radio thing. We didn't start it as a little vlog, blog, podcast, whatever this thing is now. We started as a full-on movement because during that particular time period, it was addressing college students in particular. At the University of Tennessee, we were also trying to figure out, hey, in this world where everything is offensive and you just can't disagree, in this world where you can't even have an open conversation unless you'd be so canceled that you would lose friends, family, possibly jobs and everything else, we wanted to figure out a situation of how do we get back to actual discourse, rhetoric, as you would call it? How do you get back to a situation where you can be persuasive in the dialogue you're delivering to another human being and not become so offensive that we think logically again? Now, I say all that just to say right now, you can have disagreements if you want to. You can. We encourage disagreements. We want disagreements to be happening on this program amongst friends and family and neighbors and not amongst enemies. Because at some point, if you start to look at the people in that video, say as an enemy, then you could start to see it in a very strange light. And I say all that just to say all I've ever really wanted from anybody is just a little bit of continuity, just a slight bit of consistency. Whatever your argument might be, just remain consistent from beginning to end, because at least then I know what I'm attacking. At least then I know what I'm dealing with. At least then I can understand and get a gauge upon who you are as a person and what you're bringing to the table and how we can have this conversation. But if in the same breath I can hear, wait, who is this? I don't know. Wait, I don't know. Amy who? Oh, yeah, no, she's terrible. What? 2 seconds ago, you didn't even know the lady. You didn't know who she was. You didn't know her from Jane down the street, literally. And but then this Supreme Court nominee, you say she's awful, she's terrible. Where is that coming from? And where's the lack of inconsistency? Where's the lack of inconsistency? Where is the inconsistency coming from beginning to end? Well, yes, all women should be celebrated when they reach the top of their field, but not this woman. Only the woman that I agree with should be celebrated. Let me kick it to Zig. Zig, is this a little bit unfair? Are we hitting too low-hanging fruit here, buddy? What's your take on this?
No, I wouldn't say it's unfair. One thing, though, I want to go back to originalism and stare decisis. Amy Coney Barrett actually did write an interesting paper about that. I just looked that up. So anybody who's really interested in the debate, look at originalism versus stare decisis. That'll be interesting to look at, and I'll probably have that read for tomorrow too. It's not about equality per se. It's about equalitarianism. It's a religious belief system. Okay, this is part of these people's religious belief. They worship equalitarianism, and anybody who is not an equalitarianism or equalitarian has branded by the progressive left, then they're not in the club and they're not part of our religious belief system. So, to some degree, we really ought to feel pity and sympathy for these people who are involved in a religious system that they don't know that they are partaking in.
By the way, let's hit some Facebook comments here. If you are joining us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, doesn't matter, realnewsradio.live, that's the central landing page, and we have this unified chat going on up here so I can see comments. That's this thing you see scrolling right here. Those are the comments that is coming from all across the internet here, but we love interacting with the audience here. So let's see here. Mehdi said, do the students know the difference between woman and woman? I don't know. Women, the plural and the singular, I suppose. I suppose, but I get what you're saying. I think I understand what he's saying. Are we looking at this as a monolith or a single individual? Because that could be a totally different conversation, right? Kelly said in Facebook, integrity. Oh, we don't know. That went downhill quickly. Well, it did. It did go downhill quickly. And again, look, I'm not meaning to pick on this particular age demographic because I was completely ill-informed and maybe even a little bit more dumb than that when I was that particular age. I'm just saying we need to be training up people correctly here. Eric said, because he hates women, not the impression I'd get. I'd say rather fond of them. All right, Eric, that's a good point, buddy. Eric, it's not that he hates women. It's maybe the other direction there. And Michael said in Facebook, one thing we've learned from history is that we have not learned from history. Yes. Can I say that again? That is beautiful. One thing we've learned from history is that we have not learned from history. That is absolutely wonderful. I sent out this thing on Facebook last night saying that it's a bit of a paraphrase, but something from Madison's Federalist Paper number 10, and I believe it's something to the effect of like, look, man, we're not always going to have qualified statesmen that are running in elected positions, okay? It's not always going to happen. So just here it is. Enlightened statesmen will not always be at the helm. So then Hamilton continued in number 22, saying the fabric of American empire ought to rest on the solid basis of the consent of the people. The streams of national power ought to flow from that pure original fountain of all legitimate authority. And finally, pairing this with Madison in Federalist Paper number 45, he said, the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Few and defined they are to the federal government. Those that remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. Numerous and indefinite. I think we had a slightly better comprehension as to what that meant in particular. Maybe we wouldn't be as worried about what's happening at the Supreme Court level. Speaking of the Supreme Court level, Shine, if you go back to the national stories section here, as we're talking about Amy Coney Barrett, her confirmation hearing going on today. And let's just end this story real quick by saying it is highly likely she will be confirmed. Highly likely in the sense that unless you have 3, possibly 4 Republicans switching over the next few days.
In the most dramatic way possible. If I know the current president and how much pull he has with Mitch McConnell, it will be dramatic. Guaranteed. Yeah. It might be like within 24 hours of voting starting on the 3rd. You never know.
I'm telling you, unless something like that happens, which is, in my assessment, is just not going to happen, it's highly likely she will be the next Supreme Court nominee. I believe that will solidify a 6-3 split. And then, man, if Trump wins another 4, you're talking possibly another 2 Supreme Court justices that he might replace after that. So, hey, man, but it is what it is. National story sections, though, Sean. The other sideline topic of today is Biden packing? That's a dumb way I thought of just putting a headline in there. Is Joe Biden still talking about packing the Supreme Court as we're talking about Supreme Court?
In your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
That's right. He said a Supreme Court in your pocket. Hey, if you could, buddy, pull up that first video. There's 2 YouTube videos I'd love to play here, but pull up that first video where it says Joe Biden declines discussing Supreme Court expansion until post-election. Now, I know Zig has some pretty strong opinions on this as well. And I'm telling you, like, as we've said on this program multiple times, I've always, look, if you make the bed of circumventing the legislature for 40 or 50 years, you have to lay in that bed. What do you mean, Mr. Henry? I mean, if you try and shove everything through the court system and do away with the legislature entirely, if you're not worried about your elected representatives actually doing anything by way of writing legislation that may or may not impact your life, and you're just going to shove all major pieces of societal change through unelected individuals, the court system, and this is what you get. This is what you get. This is the scenario that you've created. The Supreme Court was your sole arbiter of truth for like 4 or 5 decades. And now the split is swung back the other way. So what are you going to do? We'll play this video here real quick, Sean.
When the election is over. Now look, I know it's a great, they'll know my opinion of court packing when the election is over. Now look, I know it's a great question, y'all, and I don't blame you for asking it. But you know, the moment I answer that question, the headline in every one of your papers will be about that. Other than focusing on what's happening now. The election has begun. There's never been a court appointment once an election begun. But 4 million or so people have already voted. They're denying the American people the one shot they have under constitutional law to be able to have their input. Look, we agreed to 3 debates back in the summer. This has been going on since the early 90s. First debate, person to person. Second debate, town hall format. Third debate, person to person. We set the dates. I'm sticking with the dates. I'm showing up. I'll be there. And in fact, if he shows up, fine. If he doesn't, fine. This is one of the finest persons I've ever dealt with. This is a person who was
You can
ready
stop
on
it
day
there.
one.
What is he talking about? Like, what? Like, was he talking
I-
about Kamala Harris or Trump? Like, who
No,
even knows? Dude, can I play you one video real quick from yesterday on CNN
definitely.
in a
Yeah.
similar... This is one of Joe Biden's surrogates. I can't remember her name because she's forgettable. But, like, this was basically all of the Sunday morning talk shows yesterday. It was same on Chris Wallace, same on other channels. They're just different surrogates, right?
Nominee
It's
who
not-
is
it's
going
not-
to
it's not the
be
Biden-
the deciding vote.
It's not the Trump people who
But look,
invented this
one-
question, right? The idea of adding justices to the Supreme Court came from the progressive side of the Democratic Party. It's just a simple question. He has long been against adding justices to the court. Has he changed his mind, or does he have the same position he's had since at least 1983?
But look, see, I think you only have to look at how hard, for example, Vice President Pence wanted to go at this in the debate last week, rather than answer a question about what his administration would do to protect.
Look at Jake Tapper's exasperated face. He looks like Tucker Carlson.
Pre-existing conditions. That, to me, that tells you everything you need to know about what the Republicans are trying to do here. They would rather have this conversation than talk about the fact that they are pushing through a justice who is going to be part of a court that could potentially overturn the Affordable Care Act, that could strip away protections for pre-existing conditions, that could rule on a woman's right to choose, that could rule on equal pay issues.
We
They don't want to defend that.
I get it, and we ask Republicans those questions, but we get to ask Democrats questions too. And this is a simple question, and it's one, frankly, that Trump did not invent. It came from the progressives in the Democratic Party. And I thought it was odd when Vice President Biden said the other day, in response to a reporter's question, that voters do not deserve an answer on this. Of course voters deserve an answer on his position on every issue.
But we're not going to play their game. Well, he's given an answer. He's answered the question. I mean, he has probably answered this question 15 times over the course of the last week. The answer is, I am not going to play Donald Trump's game. I am not going to allow the term their voices heard and making sure that they have a say in who the next Supreme Court justice is.
All right. Well, I think a serious policy question is not a game.
All right.
And he makes a good point there at the end. He said a serious policy question is not a game. And it's not even a policy question. It's somehow bigger than that or whatever. But I wanted to show you that and maybe even give Zig a chance to talk about those two videos.
Yes.
And you referenced the Federalist Papers, and you can't reference Federalist Papers without letting Zig get a word in.
That's true. We'll kick it to Zig, because I know Zig and I might differ a little bit on this whole idea of court packing. Zig, go ahead, man.
Well, for one of the Federalist Papers, it says that you should only have an active federal government in times of war. Now, I don't know what kind of war we are in or have been in for the last 100 years. Perhaps it's been ourselves or lawyers against normal America. I don't know. Nevertheless, it says quite clearly in the Federalist, you don't need a national government outside of times of war. Not in those exact terms, but generally speaking. And also, too, go ahead and try to pack the court. See what happens. See how many activists come out of the woodwork. I'm all for it. You know, go ahead and try it. See if it's cool. See if everyone's happy. See if people will vote your senators back in if you try it.
So you're not worried at all about the possibility of this even?
Well, there's nothing to worry about. The studies show quite clearly that if you try to pack the court, when FDR threatened to do it, he lost both the House and the Senate. So go ahead, try it. It'll be cool. It'll be great.
Now, are you at all worried about the possibility? I mean, because one could make an argument, I don't know how well-founded it would be, but one could make an argument that say that the threat of FDR's court packing back in the day did cause that court to change its jurisprudence, say, pertaining to the Commerce Clause or something else, right? That the reason why we have such an overarching version of the government when it pertains to the Commerce Clause right now, federal government that is largely because, say, the courts were scared or at least bought into the scare tactics of FDR, saying, like, if you don't rule the way I want you to, I'm just going to dilute your vote anyways.
Yeah, but having that, we now have the lessons from history. That's not going to happen again. And furthermore, when you don't have control of House and Senate, you can just unpack the court. You can unpack the court. You can refuse to pass any legislation until the court is unpacked. We now have the advantage of history on our side saying you can't do that. It's like the equivalent of the atomic bomb. You drop it twice. Okay. Now, in this case, you only drop it once. I guess the atomic bomb, the idea was only dropped once. You can only drop it once. After that, it will not work. It cannot happen. It'll never happen.
Jonathan said in Facebook a second ago, he said, Zig feels about it exactly how I feel about it. He says, basically, Jonathan Facebook has no problem with this at all either, has no problem with the threat of this at all either. I think if the threat isn't there with the perception of something actually being done about packing courts, then the only other perception of this is, well, then just why not answer the question? And then to say the clip you played, China, was so perfect. The answer, I guess the perception that the answer could be, well, he's already answered this question. He's answered this question by saying he's not going to answer this question, which I guess is an answer in a very strict technical sense of the word. Is what's the answer to A? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you the answer to A. That is an answer to A. I'll tell you, if you just don't fill in the bubble, taking the SAT or something, right? Just don't fill in a bubble, and that's technically an answer. I don't know how you get to that point. But
furthermore, Republicans need this issue as much as Democrats to mobilize the base. But any Republican who has looked at history knows that this is a non-issue. It's not real.
Speaking of mobilizing the base, man, let's end the program
but
here.
Joe Biden refusing to answer a major, as Jake Tapper put it, policy question. I don't know if it's a major policy question or not, but it's a major question. And Joe Biden refusing to answer a question about what he would do in office by literally saying, I refuse to answer. It's very reminiscent of, we'll have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. It seems to be a pattern of that party. And I think that's an issue. You know, them saying they won't answer questions about how they would govern, that's an issue. At least worth pointing out that that's an issue. I think in general, I think people find that disgusting. I mean, even Jake Tapper, you couldn't see his face, Grant, but he just looks so exasperated. Like, do you realize what you're doing right now by saying you refuse to answer this question? I don't think people are going to like that very much. Is that how scared they are of their own progressive wing? Because they've already told them that the Green New Deal is not really happening and all these other things that probably made them upset. Are they afraid of like saying this because they're so afraid of the progressive wing of their party? I don't know.
Zig, you want to respond to that or no?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's only as much of a problem insofar as people insist answers, and it's not immediately clear then that Democrats per se are asking for answers. But furthermore, again, anybody who thinks this through, Democrats could easily say, yeah, the court could be unpacked. Maybe.
No, you're right, man. And honestly, let's be for real about this. Mehdi, I know I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but Facebook just said, why not just say no and lie like every other time thing they've lied about before? I mean, in all sincerity,
that's a real question.
It is. It really is. Why not just do that? I mean, it does. I mean, in a game of politics right now, it's not like anyone's going to hold you accountable for that either. And this is a Democrat and Republican problem. Don't think that I'm being too partisan here when I say this. And I don't even know if this guy in the Facebook was being sarcastic when he said that. But that's a real answer. Why not just lie about it? And then when you get in power,
well, that's
just do something
question.
different.
It's like, dude, the only reason they're not answering that question is they feel like there's more consequences for answering it at all than even giving a lying position. So like that's what I'm saying. What the hell is up with that?
No, it's a weird calculation to make, right, China? It is. So if I play into Republicans' hands by not answering the question at all, or I do answer the question, even by lying, you're right. The cost-benefit analysis, somebody has calculated and said, well, you know what, just by doing this version is far better than actually answering the question, whether they want to admit to it that that's their plan or just straight lie about it instead. I don't know, but that's the calculation they've made.
Because they've proven they can lie pretty well, so...
let's end the program with this too here about everything being part of the election, all of this being part of the 2020 election coming up right now. I feel like every time I take a step in the day, someone's calculating and tracking it to see how many times I've stepped for Trump or against Biden, or doesn't matter. Real Clear Politics right now, I'm looking at this national aggregate poll, has Biden up by 10.6 points. 10.6 points across the United States. It's 52.3 for Biden, 41.7 for Trump. That's the national aggregate average of the where presidential elections are standing right now. So the top battleground states are showing Biden at 49.1 and Trump at 44.6. That's a 4.5 lead for Biden. Now, you can take into account here the margins of error and all this stuff if you want to. It doesn't necessarily matter. But I'm trying to make that make sense with this poll here that Gallup just released last week. John, if you want to follow along, it's in the national news story sections. It's under the Is Biden packin sections. It's under Election 2020. It's a Newsweek article that's just basically pulling from the Gallup poll. It says more Americans, here's the headline, more voters say they're better off under Trump than when Obama, Bush sought re-election in Gallup poll. And I don't want to bury the lead here because we only have a few minutes left. So we have to get right off. We have to be off at this program right at the top of the hour here. We have meetings we got to get to, all of us. But the lead I'm not trying to bury here is basically I'm trying to understand the difference between how people are answering these polls and what might actually be going on in the real world. I'm seeing a lot of rallies, a lot of parades, a lot of boat parades, a lot of yard signs. I'm seeing a lot of stuff happening on the Trump side, and I'm just not seeing all of that stuff happening.
There was a parade in downtown L.A. this weekend.
Right?
For Trump. There was an anti-communist Hispanic parade this weekend in Florida. It's crazy.
But I will say this, too. Nate Silver over at 538, who's typically been fairly accurate when it comes to any of these elections, presidential or otherwise, is still indicating that Biden has I think there's 14% chance that they said that Trump's going to win the national election. 14%. Now, I get it. Yeah. They said the same things last time. Nate was wrong last time. I understand all that. I'm just saying, as far as pollsters go, 538 is one of the ones to pay attention to. And they're saying that it's not looking good for Trump. So I'm trying to make that make sense with this Gallup poll. Here's the poll. More American voters believe they're better off after 4 years under President Donald Trump than they did at the end of the former terms of President Obama, Bush, or Reagan. The latest survey from Gallup found that a clear majority of registered voters, that's 56% of people that they polled, believe they're better off now than they were 4 years ago. When asked whether they're better off or worse towards the end of Obama's first term in the White House, 45% told pollsters that their situation had improved between 2008 and 2012. So 56% said it had improved under Trump, 45% under Obama. Bush's, same question there, was 47%. Ronald Reagan fell 12 points below Trump as he faced re-election in 1984. 44% of people polled voters said that they and their families were better off after the first 4 years than they were in the summer of 1980. So I'm telling you, beating Reagan by 11 points. Bush polls at 47, Obama polls at 45, Trump's sitting up there at 56%. That's just the tip of the iceberg of this Gallup poll. But I want to kick it to Zig and ask, I don't know, man, do you make anything of polls anymore? Can we trust in this at all? Is there anything that you make of either one of these? Or I don't know, where are you coming from on this?
Well, I think if you talk to enough different people, you will quickly understand and at least talk to many independents or even folks who are right-leaning, kind of center, then we won't know until the election happens. And that's a place where I'm at. I've talked to tons of independents, probably hundreds, maybe close to 1,000 independents. And based on me talking with those people, I'd reached a conclusion that it's just too hard to know what's going to happen.
And I'm not even sure how much independents are going to make a difference in this one, man. I think what's really going to make a difference, and I know this sounds like, well, it's a great analysis here, Mr. Henry, but it's just what percentage of registered voters are going to show up to the physical polls. And I do mean physical polls. I just don't trust the mail-in process. And I'm not talking about some nefarious plot to steal ballots or something. I'm talking about the voting populace itself just doesn't know how to do it yet. In the overwhelming majority of these states, they've just never done it, at least not to the extent that we're talking about doing it this term around. I just don't know how many of those are going to be kicked off for legal reasons. They just won't be counted if you didn't sign right, you didn't check right, the postage wasn't right, you didn't mail it in by the certain date. I don't know. There's a number of things that could come down. Sean, though, buddy, what do you make of this, man? Are you putting more stock in something like feeling better after the first 4 years, or the fact that Real Clear's aggregate is now showing Biden up by 11 points almost?
Well, I mean, I've watched some great videos where people are actually showing that the way the polls are going right now follow the same trajectory with Clinton and Trump as they do with Biden and Trump. Like the separation follows, like if you look at it on a graph, the lines go exactly the same. So like they were close earlier this year, which was the same with Trump and Clinton, and then they spread apart as they got to the election at almost the same, when you look at it, the lines look similar. So to me, most of the news is fake news. And we know that because we do the show and we talk about people. It's not like necessarily lying. It's people frame things in ways that make things that are true look untrue and vice versa. And I think a lot of these people who work in polling and work in media are putting a lot of their own, they're projecting a little bit. I mean, just a little bit. All they'd have to do is collectively project at 1%. And I don't believe they're projecting 1% of their own hope about the election. It's probably more like 5 to 7 or 10% of bias. And I don't know. I really feel like Trump is going to win New Jersey. I feel like Trump is going to win New York. I feel like weird things are going to happen. I really do. And I think people are not going to be voting against even Joe Biden. I think they're going to be voting against cancel culture. I think they want comedy to come back. I think they want good television. I think they want good movies. I think they're tired of being politically harassed while they watch football games and basketball games and baseball games. I mean, God help us if there's some like swimming match where you got to like think about politics for a second. You know, like I think people are just generally done with that.
Yeah,
but
I think so, man.
And that's just me. And I really think there's an excitement gap between Trump and Biden, like a lot. I think there's a lot of people who don't like Trump who aren't registered to vote and weren't excited enough to vote for Biden to like figure out how to legally vote in November. And that's just by the numbers, because, you know, less than half of Americans vote. That's a thing, at least most of the time. And I think there's a lot of people who talk and who are on Twitter but like don't vote. And I know a lot of people who are hardcore about Biden that are trying to convince people that would vote for Biden to actually get out and vote because they're worried about people getting like actually physically going to vote. So I think that excitement gap's a thing. I think the polls are messed up. That's a thing. And also, you know, like what you said, I think most people feel like they're a lot better off than they were in 2015. You know.
And importantly here, this poll was conducted between September 14th and September 28th of this year. And to that point, on the way out of the program here this morning, Methny makes a great point in Facebook here, says it's crazy that they're better off during a pandemic nonetheless. That's huge. Something I didn't even pick up on. That's why we call it the greatest audience in the nation that we have here, Real News, because I didn't even think about that way. But that's also a great point there. We're in the middle of a pandemic going on right now. He's been completely, chastised for not getting the pandemic response correct. But nonetheless, still people are polling here at what looks to be 56%. Jessica says on the way out, not a fan of him personally, but my family was better off under Trump than Obama. She says it's bells and whistles. I think she's correct on that. Jeff said, I would bet internal polls are different. Trump is doing good. He also goes on to say the football and NBA rates, so rates to the public is over the cancel culture. He's talking about how nobody's watching professional sports anymore. And finally, Mehdi says, every time I go to Twitter, I see Democrat and anti-Trump hashtags trending, while very few Trump hashtags trend. This is what's concerning. I hear you there, buddy. Hey, my name is Mr. Henry. Zig over there from Pennsylvania Way. David Shine Thompson. We love each and every one of y'all. Sincerely, y'all are why we do what we do, to build this community, to grow with each other, like, shares, all that stuff. Love the hashtag shares as well, too. Do all these things. Help us grow the community so we can grow and progress with one another. Real news, real friends, saying made up by our boy Zig. We love y'all. We'll see y'all next time.